The void of space stretched endlessly around the small scout ship, Seeker. Its hull, once gleaming with the silver-blue markings of the Valen fleet, now bore the scars of narrow escapes and desperate maneuvers. Inside, Captain Gray hunched over the communications console, his slender blue fingers trembling slightly as he reviewed the data one final time. "Are you certain this is wise, Captain?" asked First Officer Trell, her large amber eyes reflecting the dim emergency lighting of the bridge. "The humans, they were primitive when we last observed them, centuries ago." Gray didn't look up from his work. "What choice do we have? The Mord have taken 3 outer colonies in the past month alone. The homeworld will fall within weeks." The Seeker drifted in the shadow of a small moon, hiding from the constant sweeps of moored scout vessels. They had jumped to this system specifically because ancient Valen records suggested it was close enough to Earth to send a signal, but far enough from Valen space that the Mord wouldn't detect their presence. The Council ordered all ships to return for the final defense, Trell reminded him gently. Gray finally looked up, his pale face set with determination. "And what good is one small scout ship against the Mord fleet? This way, at least we try. Something different." He turned back to the console and pressed his hand against the transmitter pad. The ship's computer had spent days translating their message into basic human languages, along with visual data showing the Mord attacks and technical specifications of their weapons and shields. "Message encoded and ready," the ship's computer announced. Gray took a deep breath. "Send it." A soft pulse of energy left the ship, carrying with it the desperate hopes of a dying civilization. The message was simple. "People of Earth, we need help. The Mord Collective threatens all free life. Your assistance once saved others. Please respond." Trell watched the energy signature fade into the distance, heading toward the small blue planet several light-years away. "What do you expect them to send? A diplomat, a scientist, one ship?" Gray's shoulders slumped slightly. "Anything would help at this point. Even their perspective might offer something our scientists haven't considered." Little did they know that in the centuries since the Valen's last observation, humanity had changed in ways they couldn't imagine. Admiral James Wilson stood at the window of Lunar Command, looking out at the Earth hanging in the blackness of space. At 62, his hair had gone completely white, but his posture remained as straight as when he'd first joined the United Defense Fleet 35 years ago. "You're certain about the translation?" he asked without turning. Behind him, Dr. Lisa Park nodded, her eyes still fixed on the data tablet in her hands. "Yes, Admiral. Our linguistics AI confirms it with 98.7% certainty. This is a genuine distress call from an unknown species calling themselves the Valen. They're under attack by something called the Mord Collective." Wilson turned from the window. The command center bustled with activity as technicians and officers processed the incoming data accompanying the distress signal. "And the technical data they've sent?" "It's extensive," said Commander Ben Foster, the fleet's tactical officer. "The Mord appear to be a hive-mind species with partially synthetic biology. Their ships use quantum-linked shields and plasma-based weapons, formidable but not beyond our capabilities." Wilson walked to the central holographic display where images of strange ships with angular insect-like designs fought against smaller, more elegant vessels. The smaller ships were clearly losing. "Location? The Valen homeworld is approximately 40 light-years from Earth," Foster replied. "With the new jump drives, we could have a response fleet there in under 2 weeks." Wilson's eyes narrowed as he studied the data. The Valen clearly had no idea of humanity's current capabilities. Their message suggested they expected at most a diplomatic envoy or perhaps a single ship. They didn't realize that in the centuries since humans had last encountered alien life, Earth had united under the pressure of existential threats and built a fleet designed to ensure humanity would never face extinction. "The Security Council will need to approve any major deployment," Dr. Park reminded him. Wilson nodded slowly. "Schedule an emergency session for 0800 tomorrow. Have all this data packaged and ready for presentation." He paused, watching the simulation of moored ships decimating a Valen colony. "And begin quiet preparations for the Third Fleet to mobilize." 3 days later, the United Earth Security Council chamber fell silent as Admiral Wilson concluded his Presentation. The Mord Collective represents exactly the type of threat our fleet was built to counter, he said, standing tall before the 12 council members. Based on the data provided, they systematically consume all resources in a system before moving to the next. The Valen are simply in their path. Councillor Rivera leaned forward. And you believe we should commit significant forces to help an unknown species? This isn't our fight, Admiral. With respect, Councillor, it became our fight the moment we received their call, Wilson replied firmly. We've built this fleet not just to protect Earth, but to uphold the principles that united us. If we ignore this, what message does that send to other peaceful species? More practically, if the Mord consume the Valen, they'll only grow stronger before eventually finding us. The Council President, Dr. Omar Catton, studied the Admiral thoughtfully. What exactly are you proposing? I recommend deploying the Third Fleet under my command. 50 ships, including the dreadnoughts Deterrent and Resolute. We've analyzed the Mord weaknesses and believe we can halt their advance. The council chamber erupted in whispers. 50 ships represented the largest deployment in human history. That would leave our core systems with reduced protection, noted Councillor Chen. Wilson nodded. A calculated risk, but our perimeter defense systems are more than capable of handling any known threats while the fleet is deployed. After hours of debate, the council voted. The decision: humanity would respond to the call. Back on the Seeker, Captain Gray received the shocking news from Valen High Command. They've detected what? He asked, certain he had misheard. A massive energy signature approaching the outer boundary of Valen space, repeated the commander on the secure channel. At first, we thought it was a new Mord battle group, but the signature is completely different. Initial analysis suggests multiple ships, many ships. Gray felt his heart's racing. From Earth? We cannot confirm, but the trajectory matches. Captain, what exactly did you ask these humans for? Gray stared at the data streaming across his screen, showing energy readings far beyond anything the Valen fleet had ever produced. I just asked for help. As the Seeker raced toward home, Gray wondered what kind of civilization could respond to a simple distress call with such overwhelming force. What had humanity become in the centuries since the Valen last observed them? And would their arrival mean salvation, or simply a new kind of doom? The fate of the Valen now rested in the hands of a species they had drastically underestimated. The massive hangar bay of Lunar Station Alpha hummed with activity. Shuttles darted between larger vessels, carrying supplies and personnel. At the center of this organized chaos stood the UES Deterrent, a dreadnought-class warship stretching nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern. Its dark hull absorbed light rather than reflected it, making the massive ship seem like a hole cut into space itself. Commander Jack Reed walked along the observation deck, watching as the final preparations for departure unfolded below. At 45, Reed had spent more than half his life in space, commanding everything from small patrol vessels to battle cruisers. The silver streaks in his dark hair and the faint scar running along his left jaw told stories of battles fought and won against various hostile forces at the edges of human space. Quite a sight, isn't it? Reed turned to find Admiral Wilson approaching, his white uniform crisp and immaculate despite the 36 hours of non-stop preparation. 50 ships, Reed said, shaking his head slightly. The largest force we've ever assembled outside our solar system. Wilson came to stand beside him at the railing. And you'll be leading them into unknown territory to face an enemy we've only seen in data transmissions. Reed's expression remained calm, but his eyes narrowed slightly. The tactical simulations are promising. If the Mord technology is as the Valen described, our phase shift weapons should bypass their shielding. Theory and practice are different things, Commander. Wilson handed Reed a data pad. Your final orders. The fleet jumps in 6 hours. Reed accepted the pad with a nod. What do we know about these Valen? Not much beyond what was in their distress call. Humanoid, apparently peaceful. Advanced enough for interstellar travel but clearly behind us militarily. Dr. Miller will brief you fully during the journey. And if this is a trap? Wilson's face hardened. Then you show them exactly why humanity has remained undefeated for the last century. Dr. Anna Miller hurried through the corridors of the deterrent, dodging crew members who were securing equipment for the jump. At 36, she was considered the leading expert in xenobiology and first contact protocols, though most of her work had been theoretical until now. She clutched her datapad tightly as she entered the ship's main laboratory. The space was massive, filled with equipment that could analyze anything from atmospheric samples to alien tissue. A team of 20 scientists was already at work, studying the information sent by the Valen. Dr. Miller, called out her assistant, Tom. The preliminary analysis of the Valen biological data just finished processing. Miller moved quickly to his station, scanning the results. Interesting. Oxygen breathers, carbon-based, but their cellular structure is remarkably different from ours, and their blood chemistry. Fascinating. Should we be concerned about cross-contamination? Tom asked. Miller shook her head. Their pathogens wouldn't recognize our biology as viable hosts, and vice versa. But we'll follow full protocols anyway. She moved to the center of the lab where a holographic display showed the Valen homeworld, a blue-green planet orbiting a yellow star, not unlike Earth's sun. The real question, she said, more to herself than to anyone else, is why they reached out to us specifically. Their message mentioned that we once saved others. But there's no record of humanity ever encountering the Valen before. Tom frowned. Could it be a case of mistaken identity? Possibly. Or perhaps it happened before our unified records began. Miller zoomed in on an image of a Valen from the transmission. The alien was humanoid but clearly not human, with blue-tinted skin, large amber eyes, and a slender build. Either way, she continued, we're about to make first contact with two new species simultaneously, one peaceful and one hostile. This will either be the greatest diplomatic achievement in human history, or the beginning of the largest interstellar war we've ever faced, Tom finished grimly. Captain Gray stood before the Valen High Council, feeling the weight of their disapproval bearing down on him. The council chamber, once a place of calm deliberation, now served as a war room. Holographic displays showed the advancing Mord fleet and, more disturbingly, the approaching unknown ships from Earth. You have brought another unknown variable into an already desperate situation, said Council Leader Vax, his aged face lined with worry. These humans could be as dangerous as the Mord. Gray straightened his posture. The ancient records clearly state that humans helped defend the Lorathi 3 centuries ago when the Crystal Horde attacked their worlds. Records from a time before the Great Collapse, countered Counselor Mira. We have no way to verify their accuracy, and even if true, humanity could have changed drastically since then. They have, Gray admitted. The energy signatures from their approaching fleet suggest technology far beyond what our records indicated they possessed. But they're responding to a call for help. That suggests their basic nature remains compassionate. The chamber doors slid open and First Science Director Pell rushed in, his usual calm demeanor shattered. We've received new data from our long-range sensors, he announced, connecting his datapad to the central display. The human fleet, it's massive. 50 vessels, many larger than anything in our defense force. The council members fell silent as the images appeared before them. Dark ships with sleek predatory designs, bristling with weapon systems the Valen couldn't even identify. By the first light, whispered Counselor Mira. What have we done? Gray studied the images, a mixture of hope and concern washing over him. We've called for help and they've answered with force enough to potentially match the Mord. Council Leader Vax stood slowly. Captain Gray, you initiated this contact. You will now be responsible for it. Your rank is reinstated, and you are hereby appointed as official liaison to the humans. Meet their fleet at the outer system and determine their true intentions before they reach our homeworld. Gray bowed deeply. I understand, Council Leader. As he left the chamber, Gray's mind raced. The humans had responded with far more force than he had ever imagined possible. Had he saved his people or doomed them? In 3 days, When he would face these humans directly, he would learn the answer. Commander Reed stood on the bridge of the deterrent as the countdown to jump completion reached 0. Around him, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, monitoring systems as the massive warship and its accompanying fleet prepared to emerge into Valen space. "Jump complete in 3, 2, 1, announced the navigation officer. The view through the main display shifted as the fleet dropped out of jump space. Before them lay a star system with multiple planets, and in the distance, the faint blue-green glow of the Valen homeworld. "Sensors detect multiple vessels approaching from the inner system," reported the tactical officer. "Small ships, minimal weapons, likely a greeting party." Reed nodded. "And the Mord?" "Long-range sensors show significant fleet activity 2 light days out. On the far side of the system, they appear to be massing for an assault." Dr. Miller, who had been granted bridge access for the arrival, stepped forward. "Commander, their greeting vessels are transmitting a message." Reed gestured to the communications officer. "Put it through." The main screen shifted to show a slender, blue-skinned alien with large amber eyes. When it spoke, the ship's AI translated seamlessly. "Greetings, vessels from Earth. I am Captain Gray of the Valen Defense Force. On behalf of my people, I welcome you to our system and thank you for answering our call. Though I must admit we did not expect quite so many of you." Reed met the alien's gaze steadily. "Captain Gray, I am Commander Jack Reed of the United Earth Fleet. We received your distress call and have come to render assistance against the Mord Collective. Request permission to approach your homeworld and establish proper communications." Gray's expression was difficult to read, but the slight tremor in his voice was unmistakable. "Permission granted, Commander. And thank you. Your arrival has given my people something they had lost." "What's that?" Reed asked. "Hope," replied Gray simply. As the human fleet moved deeper into the system, the Mord Collective adjusted their own approach vectors, their hive-mind registering the new arrivals, and beginning to calculate the threat they might pose. The gathering storm was about to break. The shuttle bay of the UES deterrent was immaculate, polished to military perfection. Commander Reed stood with perfect posture, flanked by Dr. Miller and a small honor guard. They watched as the Valen shuttle gently touched down, its smooth, blue-silver hull contrasting sharply with the dark, angular human vessel surrounding it. "Remember," Dr. Miller whispered, "their body language is different from ours. What looks like aggression might be curiosity, and what seems like submission could be respect." Reed gave a slight nod, his face betraying nothing of the tension he felt. This wasn't just any first contact. It was happening in the shadow of an approaching enemy force. Every moment spent on diplomacy was a moment not spent preparing for battle. The shuttle's door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing Captain Gray and 2 other Valen officials. They stepped forward cautiously, their large amber eyes taking in the human welcoming party. Gray was dressed in what appeared to be a formal uniform, deep blue with silver markings that matched the patterns on their ships. "Captain Gray," Reed said, stepping forward. "Welcome aboard the deterrent." Gray placed his right hand over his chest and bowed slightly. "Commander Reed, the Valen High Council sends their gratitude for your swift response." His eyes drifted to the massive hangar bay around them, taking in the arsenal of fighters and combat shuttles. "Though we must admit, we did not anticipate such significant military presence." Reed's expression remained neutral. "When we received your distress call and the data on the Mord Collective, our Security Council determined a full military response was warranted." Dr. Miller stepped forward with a warm smile. "I'm Dr. Anna Miller, xenobiologist and first contact specialist. We have much to learn from each other, Captain Gray." Gray's companions exchanged nervous glances. One of them, a female Valen with darker blue skin markings, leaned toward Gray and whispered something. Gray nodded before addressing the humans again. "This is Science Director Pell," he gestured to the female, "and Defense Coordinator Jax." He indicated the other Valen, a stockier individual with what appeared to be some kind of mechanical augmentation around his left eye. Jax spoke, his translator conveying a deep, rumbling voice. "Your weapon systems are Impressive. We did not realize humans had advanced so far since our last observations. Reed raised an eyebrow. And when was your last observation of Earth? The three Valen exchanged uncomfortable looks before Gray answered. Approximately 300 Earth years ago. We observed your early combustion engines and primitive radio communications. Dr. Miller couldn't suppress a small laugh. That explains the surprise. Humanity has changed considerably since then. Perhaps we should continue this discussion somewhere more comfortable, Reed suggested, gesturing toward the exit. We've prepared a conference room, and our chefs have attempted to create food compatible with Valen biology based on the data you sent. As they walked through the corridors of the massive warship, the Valen visitors couldn't hide their amazement. Crew members stopped and stared briefly before continuing their duties. For most, this was their first time seeing an alien species in person. Your ship is formidable, Gray commented, watching as they passed a weapons testing range where Marines practiced with advanced energy rifles. The deterrent is our fleet's flagship, Reed explained. One of 3 dreadnoughts we brought. Jax's mechanical eye whirred as he scanned the surroundings. 3? Your message indicated 50 vessels. Correct. 3 dreadnoughts, 15 cruisers, 20 destroyers, and 12 support ships. The Valen stopped walking for a moment, stunned by the casual mention of such firepower. Pell, the science director, found her voice first. The entirety of the remaining Valen Defense Force consists of 17 vessels, the largest being approximately the size of what you would classify as a destroyer. Reed nodded sympathetically. Which is why we're here. The data you sent suggested the Mord Collective has at least 60 ships currently in this sector. They entered the conference room, where a large display showed the current positions of both fleets in the system. The Mord forces appeared as red markers on the far side of the system, while the human fleet was represented by blue indicators near the Valen homeworld. They're gathering their forces, Jax noted, studying the display. The Mord typically attack in waves, overwhelming defenses through sheer numbers. Reed gestured for everyone to take seats around the table. Tell me about your previous encounters with them. The tactical data you sent was helpful, but I want to hear about their behavior patterns from someone with direct experience. As Gray began explaining, Dr. Miller observed the interactions closely. The Valen were clearly desperate but also frightened, not just of the Mord, but potentially of humans as well. They had reached out for help, but the scale of humanity's response had clearly shocked them. Meanwhile, at the edge of the system, a small human scout ship drifted silently, its advanced stealth systems rendering it nearly invisible to conventional sensors. Inside, Lieutenant Maria Diaz watched her display as 3 moored scout vessels approached. Hold position, she ordered her crew. Let them get closer. The bridge crew remained silent, watching as the insect-like moored ships moved into optimal range. Unlike the elegant Valen vessels or the angular human ships, the moored craft were asymmetrical, with strange protrusions and a chitinous appearance. They're scanning the area, reported the sensor officer. But they haven't detected us yet. Diaz nodded. Weapon status? Phase cannons charged and locked. New targeting algorithms loaded. Fire on my mark. Diaz waited as the lead moored vessel moved directly into their kill zone. Mark. The scout ship's phase cannons fired, the energy beams passing directly through the moored shields as if they weren't there. The lead ship's hull ruptured immediately, atmosphere venting into space before secondary explosions tore it apart. Target. 2 and 3, fire! Diaz ordered. Before the remaining moored vessels could react, they met the same fate. Within moments, all 3 enemy scouts were reduced to drifting debris. Diaz opened a secure channel to the deterrent. Scout 7 to command. First engagement complete. Phase weapons performed exactly as predicted. Their shields offered no resistance. No survivors. No distress signal detected. Commander Reed's voice came through the comm. Good work, Scout 7. Return to formation. We'll analyze your combat data immediately. As the scout ship turned back toward the human fleet, Lieutenant Diaz felt a mix of satisfaction and unease. The weapons had worked perfectly, almost too perfectly. If the rest of the moored ships were equally vulnerable, this might be a shorter conflict than anyone had anticipated. Back in the conference, Room. Reed received the combat report while the discussion with the Valen continued. He exchanged a look with his tactical officer, who nodded slightly. Captain Gray, Reed interrupted politely. We've just had our first engagement with moored scout vessels. 3 ships, all neutralized. The Valen delegation froze, their expressions showing disbelief. Already? Jax asked. You engaged them without coordination with our forces. Reed's face remained impassive. Our scout ships were monitoring the system perimeter. The moored vessels approached and action was taken. And the outcome? Gray asked carefully. Complete neutralization. Our phase shift weapons bypassed their shields entirely, just as our analysts predicted based on your data. The conference room fell silent as the implications sank in. Science Director Pell was the first to speak, her voice barely above a whisper. You mean you've already found a way to defeat their primary defense? Dr. Miller nodded. Our scientists analyzed the shield frequencies in the data you sent. The moored rely on quantum-linked deflection fields, but they operate on predictable harmonics. Our phase weapons fire at precisely the frequencies their shields cannot block. Gray looked at his fellow Valen, then back to the humans. We've been fighting them for years and never discovered this weakness. Reed leaned forward. Sometimes it takes a fresh perspective, Captain. Now let's discuss how our forces can work together. The moored will know we're here now, and they'll be coming in force. As the tactical planning began in earnest, the Valen started to realize that the humans hadn't just brought ships and weapons, they'd brought hope in the form of new ideas and approaches. The tide was about to turn in a war they had been losing for far too long. The command center of the deterrent hummed with focused energy as officers moved with practiced precision between stations. On the main display, red icons representing the moored fleet shifted formation. They were no longer gathering at the edge of the system. They were advancing. They're moving faster than expected, Commander Reed observed, his voice calm despite the implications. They've abandoned their usual approach pattern. Captain Gray stood beside him, his blue skin seeming paler under the harsh lights of the human ship. The moored never change their tactics. Never. They rely on overwhelming force applied methodically. Until now, Reed replied. Our destruction of their scout ships has triggered something. They recognize us as a serious threat. Tactical Officer Vega approached with a data pad. Sir, analysis of their new formation suggests they're concentrating their largest vessels at the front. They're preparing to punch straight through our defensive line. Reed studied the display thoughtfully. They're adapting. Interesting. He turned to Gray. Your people said the moored operate with a hive mind. Could they be reacting collectively to a new threat? Before Gray could answer, Dr. Miller entered the command center, slightly out of breath. Commander, I have something important. We've completed our analysis of the moored biological data. Go ahead, Doctor. Miller brought up her findings on a side screen. The moored aren't fully organic. Each individual has synthetic components integrated into their nervous systems, creating a network that spans their entire collective. It's how they coordinate so effectively. Like a living computer network, Reed mused. Exactly. And networks have vulnerabilities. Miller's eyes shone with excitement. If we could broadcast a signal on the right frequency, we might be able to disrupt their coordination temporarily. Reed turned to his communications officer. How quickly can we modify our communications array to broadcast on the frequencies Dr. Miller specifies? 2 hours, maybe less. Make it happen. Reed looked back at the tactical display. But we need to slow their advance until then. Gray stepped forward. Commander, my ship could help. The Seeker is small and fast. We could deploy your disruptive technology once it's ready. Reed considered this for a moment before nodding. Approved. Now let's adjust our defensive position. If they want to punch through, we'll make them pay for every meter. High above the Valen homeworld, the human fleet spread into a wide defensive formation. Destroyers and cruisers formed the front line, while the massive dreadnoughts hung back, their weapon systems powered up and ready. The remaining Valen ships integrated into the formation, their crews working alongside human officers through newly established communication.